This season, I was able to test out 3 shoes from Adidas Terrex that all share the Agravic name, but which are built for different types of trail running. The Agravic Speed Ultra, the Agravic Speed, and the Agravic 3. And while they might look similar, after running in all 3, I can tell you that they each serve a very different purpose. And the one that I ended up gravitating towards was a bit of a surprise to me, which I'm going to tell you all about in this episode of The Mudroom. So let's start with where each of these shoes fit within the lineup, starting with the Speed Ultra, which is Adidas's trail super shoe. It's rocker-shaped, high stack, and built for fast, runnable, and flowy trails. And you may have seen David Roche training and racing in these last couple of seasons. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, the Agravic 3 is more of a daily trainer. It's a little heavier, it's more protective, and definitely more stable, making it the best option of the 3 for mixed or more technical terrain. And the Agravic Speed, well, it sits somewhere in the middle. It's actually the lightest of the 3. It's a little lower to the ground, and I think it makes the most sense for shorter races or for faster training runs where you still want some cushion, but you don't need the full rocket ship treatment of the Speed Ultra. Now, all 3 of these shoes were provided to me by Adidas Terrex earlier this year as I was training for the Flagstaff Crest 39 miler, which took place in May down in Arizona. Adidas Terrex was sponsoring that film. And when I first tried them on in the store, the fit was the biggest difference that I noticed right away. So let's start there, because I truly believe that fit is the most important factor when evaluating a shoe. I'm normally a size 12 in most running shoes, and I have a lower volume foot with an especially narrow heel. So I've always gravitated towards models like the S-Lab lineup from Salomon. I'm also a 4-foot striker, which both the Speed and the Speed Ultra are definitely designed for. But when I put them both on in the store, they felt way too big. The Speed Ultra especially, so I went down from my usual 12 to an 11.5, and that seemed to fit me well. I'd be curious to hear from others in the comments if you found the same thing. And I think the main reason for this is the thin and lightweight seamless upper that's used on both. The heel here and along the collar is especially thin, and I think that creates for a kind of a higher volume fit, and so I found that my heel was lifting out, and I immediately felt the rocker design when I was walking around in the store. In fact, I felt a little bit like I was walking duck-footed on the back of my heels. But as soon as I began to jog and got up on my toes, I really felt the propulsion from that rocker design, which is what makes these shoes so much fun. For anyone familiar with how a boat works when it planes in the water, you need to get a certain amount of speed to get out of the water and to stay there, which is much more faster and more efficient than just plowing through it. And that's exactly how it feels to run in these shoes. But I cannot stress enough that both the Speed and the Speed Ultra really are designed for mid to 4-foot strikers. So this might rule both shoes out for many of you heel strikers out there. Now, the Agravic 3s, I found they fit pretty much true to size. The size 12 was just right for me. And I think this is mainly due to the extra padding here in the heel and the collar, which helps to fill in some of that volume and to really cinch the heel down. And they've also got less of a rockered design, so they're gonna feel much more comfortable right away, especially when you're walking in them in the store or on the trails. And that, of course, translates to power hiking as well, which, let's be honest, is something that we end up doing quite a bit in ultras. I guess unless you're David Roche. But before I go any further, let's compare in detail the features of the 3 shoes. So you can see that the stated heel drop is the same across the board, but that's going to depend a little on where you're landing on the shoe, particularly with the Speed Ultra with that extra rocker design. And I think that's why heel drop can be difficult to compare with the modern design, that rocker design of many shoes. But the difference in stack height is quite obvious, with the Agravic Speed in the middle actually having the lowest stack height, since it doesn't have energy rods or a plate, which we'll talk more about in a minute. The lug depth also varies. They all have a continental rubber outsole, with increasing lug depth from the Speed Ultra through to the Agravic 3. So speaking again to those intended use cases, with the Speed Ultra being more for faster trails and the Agravic 3 for maybe more technical trails and certainly trails with more mud. The Leg Strike Pro Foam on the Speed Ultra is more responsive, and it also has energy rods and that more aggressive rocker, so by far the most energy return of the 3 shoes. The Speed uses a dual layer foam, a combination of Light Strike and Light Strike Pro, so a little softer, while the Agravic 3 uses a newer version of the Light Strike, Lightstrike 2.0 foam, providing the most cushion. And it also features a TPU stability plate, which I found interesting. And of course, we can't ignore price. These are the original prices at adidas.com. So as I said, I ended up putting a fair number of miles on these shoes. I think about 100 kilometers so far on the Speed Ultras, and at least 200 kilometers and counting on the Agravic 3s. And that includes the race itself, the Flagstaff Crest 39 miler. And I decided to use them for the race because while I really enjoyed the Speed Ultras for my faster workouts on the trails, I knew that the race would include some slightly more technical terrain. And the race really was more of a training run for me at the end of what was a fairly big week of pacing at the Cocodona 250. So I figured that I might be a little fatigued and not running with the best form, but ultimately I just didn't really know what to expect at the race. And that's where I think the Agravic 3 really shines. Because in addition to being quite comfortable, they're just a really versatile shoe, but they're still quite fast and fun. And the 4mm lugs, they are definitely more appropriate for the kinds of trails that I normally run on back home here in Vancouver as well, where we have a lot of mud and more variable terrain. And as I said, that less rocker design is much more appropriate for terrain with a lot of hills, where you might find yourself having to power hike on the climbs or maybe brake on your heels on the descents, which is going to be more difficult in a rockered shoe. Now the Speed Ultra, on the other hand, really is made for that California carpet with long runnable sections of trails and more gradual climbs, but without a lot of rocky or kind of twisting terrain where they might feel a little bit unstable. Although I know that Audrey absolutely loves this shoe, which she used for her race at the Desert Rats 100K earlier this year. But the Speed, now this might be a sweet spot for many because you get a lot of that responsiveness and the agility from the Speed Ultra, but with a lot more versatility. But as I said, always start with fit because none of these features matter if the shoe isn't right for the shape of your foot and for your running style. So visit your local specialty running store to try them on first and go from there. Be sure to watch my film from the Flagstaff Crest 39 mile if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments what your experience has been with any of these 3 shoes and if there's anything that you think I missed.